Cuba has declared 9 days of mourning after former leader Fidel Castro died at the age of 90. His brother, the president, Raul Castro, announced his death last night.
On November 25, 2016, thousands of Cuban Americans in Miami rushed to the streets to celebrate the death of Fidel Castro, the island's seemingly immortal dictator. For 58 years, he escaped the Grim Reaper's scythe and continued to envelop Cuba in a blanket of oppression. Something made abundantly clear by this outpour of camaraderie among exiles. They cry for freedom, something Cuba has never really had. Ruled for years by the Spanish, then supervised by the Americans, screwed over by a corrupted dictator, and then fooled by a communist successor. And if those same exiles knew that a month before Castro's death, I had bought a ticket to visit Cuba, they'd have something to say about it. I get it. Millions of Cubans in Miami were forced to leave home and have never been back. But for that same reason, I grew up feeling Cuban. I'm surrounded by it, yet all I know about Cuba is the stories I've heard from others. I felt it was time I had my own story to tell. Upon landing in Cuba, you're thrust into another world. At first, it seemed like the world I had been warned about. Propaganda glorifying the revolution on every corner, war tanks enshrined like monuments, and a brainwashed cab driver who claimed Fidel Castro was the greatest human in the history of humanity. Luckily, he was the only government sympathizer I encountered. That communist ideology is deteriorating. The rest of the people were more like Mauricio, who welcomed us to Cuba with open arms. Mauricio was hanging at El Floridita, famously known for being Ernest Hemingway's favorite bar and home to the birthplace of the daiquiri. Once he found out I was Cuban American, he gave me a hug, handed me a cigar, and said, "Enjoy Cuba, it's your Cuba too." That phrase gave me chills because I wasn't born there, but in so many ways I was born of it. Mauricio gave me the permission I needed to let myself have fun and embrace the culture. My first step in embracing the culture was embracing my past. Upon arrival, I went to visit the neighborhood that my dad grew up in Havana. Seeing that building in person was worth every exiled eye roll. It was something no amount of photographic memory could describe. Bike chains rustling, fruit wagons maneuvering, and flip-flops clanking on uneven sidewalks provided the soundtrack to belonging. It felt like home because maybe it could have been. Never in my life had I felt this sense of identification. And my dad, well, he loved this pilgrimage I was on. Once he saw that iron gate he used to open daily, we took a stroll down a memory lane called Manrique Condesa.
¿Tiene fósforo? ¿Fósforo? Cojones, si no hay fósforo, le buscamos, que cojones. Ok. Ahora sí. Hasta que se seque, ¿qué? Dice. Hasta que se seque, malecón. Hasta que se seque el malecón. Hasta que se seque el malecón. Hasta que se seque el malecón.
The way the sun sets on the Malecón harbor carves out perfect silhouettes. Even the most awkward postures suddenly become picturesque against the backdrop of crashing waves. It makes for the ideal setting for impromptu Cuban music, which proved to be a quick summary of the Cuban spirit. This song is literally about a woman's house burning down, but tragedy has never sounded more fun. We repeatedly heard jodidos pero contentos, sufrimos pero gozamos. We're screwed but happy, suffering but enjoying life. In Cuba, dance is the best medicine. Cuba, a country frozen in time involuntarily. A permanent throwback Thursday. No symbol more evident of the antiquity than the classic cars. They're a fundamental part of the allure and romance of the island and also a testament to Cuban ingenuity. These cars are 60 years old and still running, bonded with tape and sometimes fueled by soda. I kid you not. But they're also ironic reminders, built by the very Americans they've been trained to detest. But times are changing. They have to. American soil is more coveted than these relics of American metal. Sure, they're beautiful, but any Cuban will take freedom over a starring role in a postcard. I'd be remiss if I ignored the revolution. It happened. It's why I was born in Miami and not Havana, and I had to see it for myself. History belongs to the authors, and in a city without free access to different authors, the revolution is all they know. Literally, all books for sale are propaganda, and the Museum of Revolution is their magnum opus. It's weird to spend time in a place that glorifies everything my family ran away from. Housed in the former presidential palace, it's a beautiful building. But the architecture wasn't enough to disguise the architects of evil it praises. One of them being Che Guevara. Make no mistake, this man is no hero. He is no symbol of rebellion or revolution. He may have started out with the right ideals, but he was a murderer and a facilitator to an oppressive regime. If you visit Cuba, do us all a favor and don't buy a shirt with this guy's face on it.
Óyeme, Celia, vamos a cantarle a Cuba. ¡Ay, mi Cuba! Esa tierra linda que nos vio nacer.
Aquí puedo meter azúcar.
¡Claro que sí! Oye esto.
Cuba, qué lindos son tus paisajes. Cuba, qué lindos son. Cuba, qué lindos son tus paisajes. Cuba, qué lindos son.
Yo hice un viaje a través de distintas.
Outside the bustle of the capital is a quiet countryside. Lush landscapes that cater to a simpler life. Sun, soil, and tradition. That's all they need. In the fields, tobacco plants wait to become future cigars. Each leaf picked individually and hung to dry for 5 months. Described by a plantation worker as trabajo bello, or beautiful work. How many of us can say that about our 9 to 5 with the infinite more possibilities afforded to us? This woman had probably never seen an iPhone until tourists started pointing them in her direction. And I gather that she wouldn't have had the slightest desire for one. Without social media, you live a life free of comparisons. Envy is the worst kind of witchcraft, they say. In our eyes, this woman seems to not have enough, but it's enough to make her happy. Isn't that the hashtag we're all looking for anyway?
¡Chúpate esa!
¿Qué tú crees? ¿Que me ganaste? Oye lo que traigo para ti. Qué bonito es el Caney, Guantánamo, Caimanera, Cienfuegos, Cristo, Yateras y el pueblo de Babiney. Qué bonito es Camagüey, Sidra, Caimito y Rincón. Muy lindo es Consolación, el tuyo, Willy, Artemisa y Guanajay. Pero mi Habana, compay, no admite comparación. Las dos son lindas.
Ni pa' ti ni pa' mí.
¡Vamos!
The Buena Vista Social Club, a who's who of Cuban musicians all hitting the stage at once. Many of them now have passed, but a few are still at it, and what a joy it was to see live.
Ellos quieren abusar porque dicen que uno está vieja, pero no vieja, ¿viste? Y la pongo buena. ¿Entendiste?
They went around asking where everyone was from. When they got to our table, we said we were born to Cuban parents in Miami, to which they replied, "So you're American?" They proceeded to play American music, and my friend danced like an idiot in protest. Yes, we are American, but we grew up in a remote Cuba. We're not from here, and we're not really from there. We're hybrids. In the end, that identity crisis didn't matter much. The stars of the Guajirito proved that regardless of where you're from, when in Cuba, live it up. Fresh off their advice, we went looking for more nightlife. What we found was La Crema. The year was coming to a close, but I still had one thing pending: find a Cuban barber, fast. Tucked behind an alley with nothing but a cardboard sign to advertise its services, I knew this was the place. And what a place it was. Armed with a new haircut, new coibas, and a refreshing new sense of self, I was ready for a much-awaited Havana night. atop the roof of the Hotel Saratoga, we toasted to 2017 while more legendary musicians chanted the new motto, Lo malo pa allá, lo bueno pa acá. The bad over there, the good over here. The sky was void of fireworks, but somehow the air seemed filled with hope, and smoke, and rum. Like, way too much rum. In a country where lips should be sealed, a talkative cab driver is the best thing you can ask for. He opened up about the regime. He said, the thing with communism is that when everything is everyone's, then no one really has anything. But he believed little by little the smoke is rising out of the pressure cooker. The resistance just can't resist progress. No one can.
Cuando a Varadero llegué, conocí la felicidad. Cuando a Varadero llegué, todo fue verdad. ¿Recuerdas mi bien?
Varadero's every bit as magical as our parents had described. Crystalline waters, white sand, and a certified escape from civilization. No Wi-Fi for miles, just the way nature intended beaches to be. It's where your local lifeguard is also your resident cigar salesman, and where kids play with shovels instead of iPads. In Varadero, it's just you, the ocean, and coconuts filled with Havana Club, the elixir of life. The next morning, we took a drive with a man who blessed us with a saying, equal parts funny and inspiring. Cubans are like dolphins, up to their necks in water, but always clapping. A lesson on how to act in the face of adversity, keeping their chin up and staying positive, like these guys singing outside La Bodeguita del Medio. A humbling song about how even the smallest thing is a moment worthy of a celebratory drink. That night we sat in the sand, cohibas in hand, watching what was surely the most beautiful sunset I had ever witnessed. Every moment a different picture-perfect paint stroke. This is the stuff screensavers are made of.
Monte tiene garabato y tú verás. Monte tiene garabato y tú vas a ver. Monte tiene garabato y tú verás. Monte tiene garabato y tú vas a ver.
Our driver left us with a parting thought. He said, Cuba no es ni muy muy, ni tan tan. It's not as oppressive as we think, and it's not as impressive as socialists presume. That free healthcare and education comes at a high cost, but there's also a growing private sector thanks to paladares and casa particulares. Believe me, Cuba isn't what it could be, but it's not North Korea, it's not Haiti, and it's not Syria. You won't find a gun on the street or a war drone in the air. You also won't find a freshly painted building. But you will find people that are refreshing. Cubans have the single most important component for change, and that's hope. In many ways, Cuba seems like a land yet to be discovered. It's surrounded by greenery for miles, fertile soil longing for bustling agriculture, anxious to fulfill its purpose of producing for its inhabitants. And someday it will. Don't believe what they tell you. Visit Cuba. The influx of tourism is good, from a financial and philosophical standpoint. Information is the greatest import. Every conversation with an outsider is like a textbook that starts breaking an evil ideology. And if you're Cuban American and get a chance to do it, do it. The thing that shocked me the most about Cuba was the lack of culture shock. It immediately felt familiar. In fact, I've never felt more connected to who I am than now. So, don't rob yourself of your roots. Cuba is yours too. And hopefully someday, it'll be everyone's.
Guantanamera.